Through each of these forgotten American heroes one by one, and you can tell me your thoughts and takeaways from the lives of each. So first, we have James Fortin, and you have the floor.
I think James Fortin is an example of what you can do in your youth. At 14 years old, he wasn't drafted, he wasn't pushed in, he wasn't demanded in. At 14 years old, he volunteered to get on an American warship to fight. Despite all that was going on with slavery, despite all the prejudice that was going on in the country, he decided it was up to him at 14 to fight against the British. And then when captured and offered the life of luxury, he rejected it. These are more than just American heroes. These are individuals who we should, me included, model our lives after.
You're exactly right. And of course, now we also have the Arctic explorer himself, Matthew Henson, traveling all over the world and, of course, trekking through the snowy environment, I should say, of the Arctic. What do you think about his life?
Yeah. Once again, the theme continues, but 2 years earlier, 12 years old. Nowadays, you can't get a 12-year-old to clean the room, let alone volunteer to get on a ship and become a cabin boy. He was in service to others. That's what he did. And then he got to know the sea and how to sail so well that he was credited largely with the discovery, like you mentioned, of the North Pole. And then, even after he returned back, and some racism reared its ugly head, and he wasn't given full credit. He didn't deny the country. He didn't turn away from the country. He simply kept on fighting. So Matthew Henson, once again, represents the best of the best. This is what's remarkable. Despite the conditions that he lived in, despite the time, despite the injustice, he still was the best of the best, if not the best. In fact, one article commented that he was better at driving a dog sled than even the Eskimos at the time.
And last but not least, we come to one of my personal favorites, the World War II hero, Doris Miller. I just love this story about him getting behind that gun. I think he says he believes he hit at least one or two enemy fighters that day. So really an amazing story here with Doris Miller. And of course, sadly, he ends up losing his life. He's killed in action a few weeks or months later in battle. But what can you tell us about Doris Miller and his life?
What's remarkable for me about Doris Miller, and like you, this is probably one of my favorites I didn't even have to read up on with Doris Miller. What's remarkable about Doris Miller is that he represents why racism took a hard end in the country. Because after you encountered people like him, Black Americans, day after day after day, in World War I, even in World War II, where he is at Pearl Harbor, after you encounter how, despite whatever was going on, they begin to fight, you couldn't deny that they were shedding blood just like any other American. And that shows something to my friends on the left and to my friends at BLM, such the few that I do have. That shows you that the answer isn't to push back and talk about systemic injustice and how much you hate the country. The answer is to become more patriotic, because more patriotism shows everyone else just how American you are. And if there is injustice in the country, they'll stand up next to you. That's why Doris Miller he's such amazing to me and personally, because of whatever was going on at the time, right? He wasn't allowed to be a gunner because of his race. He wasn't allowed to. But no matter what was going on at the time, he stood up to be an American, and no one around him could deny him such a place of honor. That's why Doris is so important to me personally and to Black History Month and to all of America.